morning. Today I, Chitra from AKGEC IT department, here to present a topic that is a constructor, destructor and friend function from the subject that is object oriented in system design, and the subject code is KCA054. So let's start the topic. The topic is here constructor. As we know, the constructor is a member function basically of a class. We know there are some member function, but it's a special member function. We say why it is special, because it is whenever you are initializing the object of the class, it will get called automatically. In the C++, it is called automatically whenever you are creating the object. There is no need to call it. So that's why we call it a special member function of the class. Normally, in the object oriented, whenever you are created a class, you are creating the member function of that class, then via object you need to call them, but it will get called automatically. That's why we call it a special member function of the class. Now see, here is why a constructor is different from the member function. Most of the time it came in the exam with the properties, write the properties of the constructor or how it is different from a member function, elaborate it, justify it. So see here, a constructor is different from a class. How? It is having the same name as of the class. Normally the member function are not having the same name of the class. It is having the same name of your class. Constructor do not have any return type, not even the void. A constructor is called automatically whenever object get created. If we do not specify a constructor, then the compiler will automatically generate a default constructor for us. But default is basically a constructor with the no body. Basically, it is having the empty body. That's why we called it default constructor. So these are the properties of the constructor. Most of the time, it came in your exam. So here is a declaration, the definition of the constructor, how we declare a constructor. So here are the two declarations we have done. One is inside the class, one is outside the class. See here, we are creating a class with the name ABC. As the name of the class is ABC, so the constructor name will be the same, right? So in the public mode, it specifies the two data member. Then it is having a constructor. It initializes here variable. Whatever the variable data member it is specifying here, it is getting its value through the constructor. So it's a constructor here. We are having the same name of that of the class. This is the declaration outside the class. As you can declare the member functions in the similar method, you know that earlier we have studied that how to declare a member function inside the class and outside the class. So similarly, there are the constructor. It is a special member function. So in a similar manner, it can also be specified within the class and outside the class. Whenever you are declaring it outside the class, you need to just specify here. You need to just declare it here. As you are declaring the other member function, you have to declare here the constructor as well. No need to give the body part. Just declare it. Terminate your class. Outside the class, as you have specified the other member function, first name of the class, then scope resolution, then you are having the member function name, right? In the similar manner, name of the class, scope resolution, then constructor name. And constructor name is same as that of the class. So whenever you are specifying a constructor outside the class, you will see 2 times the name of your class here, right? And rest the body part will be the same here. The constructor can be defined under the public, private and the protected section, as you can specify the other member function. Then there comes types of the constructor. The types of the constructor in the very first type is the default. As the name suggests, default, so it's a constructor which do not take any argument. That's why it is default. It is having no parameter. So it's a code, basically a simple code to elaborate the concept of the constructor. It is having the name class construct. So we will have the same name of the constructor, construct name, same name we will find here. It's a constructor, right? It is having the two data member A and B. Whatever the data member it is specifying, we are getting its value in the constructor, and it will get called automatically when we create the object of that class. Now, see, when this class get terminated, we are having our main method. We are creating the object of the class. Whenever we are creating its object, this method will get called automatically. So the A and B will get the value 10 and 20 here. And after that, it's simply displayed. We haven't called it. We didn't write like the other member function C dot and member function. We never called it. It's get called automatically whenever the object get created. That's a most important thing in the constructor, that it will get called automatically whenever your object get created. And as it's a default constructor, so we do not pass any parameter here in the construct. Then we are having the body, then we are having the brackets empty. If I am passing here any parameter, then it will become the another constructor. Now in the case of the default, it should be blank. Simple braces, just a simple braces with the name of your class. That's why we call it default constructor. Now the parameterized constructor, what it says, a constructor which has parameters, it means which are having the arguments inside the brackets, it called parameterized constructor. It is used to provide the different values to the distinct object. To the different object, if you want to provide the different values, then we need to call it. For example, see here a simple code. There is a class employee. It is having a data member like ID, it is having name, it is having salary, that is a float data type. It is having basically 3 data member here with the 3 different data type like int, string, float. It is having 3 type, right? It is having a parameterized constructor. Employee is the name of the class, so we are having the same name here. It's a constructor. Whatever the 3 data member now it is having. In the case of default, what we have done, we are directly passing here value. But in the case of the parameterized, what it is doing, whatever the data member it specify, it is passing their value through the arguments. Now it is having an integer argument, it is having a string argument, it is having a float argument, as we'll see. The 3 data type is having here in the argument. Whatever the values get passed here in the I, N and S, it will get transferred to ID, name and salary here. We are assigning these parameters to our data member. So our ID get the value of I, our name will get the value of N because it is a string type, our name is also of the string type. Whatever the salary will get, the value of S. S is a float type, our salary is of float type. The data types are same. We need to match it, right? In the display, this is another member function. Why we create that member function? Because we need to display all the values. To display all the values, or to show all the values, you can write show method, display method, output method, anything. Name can be of your own choice. But constructor should be having the name of the class. You cannot use any other name here. That's the condition. Here it is displaying all the variables, right? After that, it's terminating the class. Now, how to call it? As we have seen in the case of default, no need to call. Whenever the object gets created, see previously, as the construct C object is created, it gets called automatically. But now see here, again, we will not create here. We will not call it. We will just create the object. But this time, whenever we are creating the object, we need to pass the parameter here. Because the argument when get transferred here, whenever that object get created, it passes the argument, integer argument, a string argument, a float argument to this constructor. Now I am creating another object E2. It passing another set of value to this constructor. So as we have seen in the definition, it is used to provide the different values to the distinct object. Different number of objects. If you want to pass the different values, then we can use it. We are creating here 2 objects and we are passing the different set of values. Now, if I want to display these values, what need to do? Just with the help of this object, we need to call the display method. Now, it's a simple member function. That's why we need to call it specifically with the help of object. Then only it will display our result. But it's a constructor. We haven't called it. We are just creating our object. But we need to pass the parameter here. That's a condition. Right? Now, there is a constructor overloading also. It says in the C++, we can have more than one constructor in a class with the same name as long as each has a different list of arguments. Means one can be the default, one can be the parameterized. This is a concept of your constructor overloading. It is quite similar to your function overloading. Like the different functions you are having, either they are different different on the basis of the type of the argument or on the number of the argument. So similar to that one, there is a concept constructor overloading also. So the overloaded constructor essentially have the same name as the name of the class. That's a condition, same as that of the previous constructor, and the different number of the argument. That then only we can say the constructor is get overloaded, right? A constructor is calling depending upon the number and the type of the argument. Similarly, as we have done in the function overloading. You know, in the function overloading, how the compiler will decide which function is need to be called. It depends upon either the number of the argument or on the type of the argument. So similarly, in the constructor overloading also, how the compiler will need to call, which constructor it need to call. It depends upon the number and again the type of the argument. While creating the object, argument must be pass to the, let the compiler will know which constructor needs to code, as we have done previously. Now it's a simple code to elaborate. See here, it is having a class construct. So we will have the two constructor with the same name construct. It is having a data member, that is area. It needs to calculate the area. Now this is a default constructor in which area is initialized with the 0 value. It is a parameterized constructor with having the two values, that is two integer parameters, right? So whatever the integer parameter we are passing here in the parameterized constructor, they will get perform the function and the value will get stored inside our area. This is a function that is just used to, this is a member function basically which is used to display the our result, right? Whatever the area will get calculated, we will display it here in the display function. Then your class get terminated. In the main method it says, now we need to create the object of the class. Here I am creating the two object of the class. First is O and second is O2. Now how the compiler will aware from this in which constructor it needs to call, it depends upon the type of the argument. We haven't passed any argument. This O will automatically call our default constructor with the 0 value. When we are creating an object with the argument, then now it is aware whenever we are passing to integer value, it automatically will call our parameterized constructor, right? So 10 and 20 will get passed here. It will get calculated. Area will get a value, and then later on we know that it's a member function. It is not a constructor. We need to call it to display our result. So with the help of one time, with the help of O, we call the display. And the second time with the help of O2, we call the display method. So to display our value, that is 0 and 200. As we have seen in previously in the function overloading, that constructor compiler is how compiler will call your function depends upon the number and the type of the argument. Here the compiler is aware how to call the default constructor, when to call the default constructor and when to call the parameterized constructor. It depends here on the type of the argument. Whenever you're not passing any argument, it definitely calls your default. Whenever you're passing a parameter, it will call a parameterized constructor. So in the constructor overloading, you are having more than one constructor. One will be the default, one will be the parameterized. Now we have studied the constructor. So there is a concept opposite to that, that is destructor. Now it's a member function which is deallocating the object, which is used to free the memory which is get allocated by the objects basically. Whatever the memory is consuming by the object, it will get deallocated by the destructor. Now how it is different from a normal member function? It is having the same name as that of the class but preceded with a tilde symbol. In the constructor we have seen the name of the class and simple the name of the class with the function basis, right? But if we put a tilde symbol here, it will become a destructor. Then it says the destructor do not take any argument. It do not take any argument, do not return anything. It is just used to free the memory, just to either you can just display a simple message to show the user that your object is going to be destroyed, or it is used to free the memory, anything, right? Then it says we do not write, if you do not write any your own destructor in the class, then the compiler will create a default constructor for you. It will work fine until unless you are allocating the memory dynamically or you are using pointer. A class contain a point. If your class contain a pointer or allocating a memory through it, then you need to call the destructor to deallocate the memory. This is just done to avoid the memory leakage. Now see a simple code here. A class employee is here. It is having a constructor. It's a constructor because it is not having a tilde symbol here, right? It is having the same name as that of the class. So it means it's a default constructor. We are not passing any parameter here, right? It is just used to display that a constructor is invoking. It will use to display a message, a constructor is invoked. Now, with the same name of the class, we are writing a tilde symbol before that. It means to showcase that it's a destructor. This time, it is not having any body. If you will not write anything, still it will work fine. But if you want to display the user that the destructor is calling or the object is going to destroy, then we can display our message as well here. Then our class will get terminated. In the main method, it is creating the two objects of the employee class simply, right? And returning back. Now when the E2 is called, it will simply call the constructor. Constructor is invoking. When E2 is called, then it simply says constructor is invoking. As the two object is called, two time destructor will be called, and it will display the same message two times. Just remember this thing with the tilde symbol. This will be the to showcase that it's a destructor. Another important concept is here, as we have seen, constructor, destructor, parameterized constructor, and we have seen the constructor overloading with the two constructor we are having at one time in a class. One is parameterized, one is the default we can have, right? After covering all these important concepts, we are having another important concept, that is the friend function. Now, why to use a friend function? Now, see here it says it is possible to grant a member function access to a private member of a class by using the friend. If you are declaring any of the friend function, then you are providing access to your non-member function. It means the member function which are not of that class, you are granting them the access, you are giving them the permission to access your private members of the class. Whenever you are specifying a member function under the private specifier, then it means only it can accessible within the class only, right? But it cannot be accessible to the non-member function. By declaring a friend function, you can giving them permission to get access of that private data member. A friend function has access to all the private and your protected member function of the class for which it is to be friend. To declare a friend function, what we need to do? We need to include its prototype within the class, preceded it with the keyword that is friend. Now see a simple code here. Here is a class name is my class. It is having the two data members that are A and B. Under the public specifier, it specifies a friend function and a normal member function. Now see, in sum, and it is having a class name. Now this is a condition here in the, whenever you are declaring a friend function, how you can access its private data member? You can access it via object calling. So we need to create an object of that class here. It's a simple member function. It is a friend function preceded with the friend keyword. In a set AB, it is getting the two parameter to set the value of A and B. It will simply declare it here. It haven't defined it here. It will define it later on outside of the class, right? Or yes, outside of the class with the help of the scope resolution operator, as we know. So it is a void function, void member function. So it is having void class name, scope resolution, your function name. Then there are the two ways to declare a member function, as we see in the constructor, that you can declare a constructor within the class and outside the class. Similarly, a member function within the class and outside the class. It is declaring it inside the class but defining it outside the class with the help of scope resolution operator. Now, whatever the parameters get passed here, it will get transferred it into A and B, right? Now note that this sum is not the member function of the class, it is a friend function. So there is no need to write the scope resolution. It is a normal function. As in a normal function, we declare it and we can define it later on. So here we have declared it that this function will become the friend of that class, and outside of the class we are defining it, but the condition is we are not writing here that the class name with the scope resolution. Here we are writing it to specify that this member function belongs to this class, and we are defining it outside the class. But here it's a friend function just like a normal function. So we are just writing the return type, function name and the class object, right? Sum is a friend of the my class, so it can directly access A and B. Now whatever the what it's doing, basically it is getting the members that are private. We haven't write here public, so A and B by default they are the private data type, right? They are the private data members. Basically, they are by default access specifier is the private. So A or B of the private specifier. Now here it's getting the A and B with the help of the object of the class. This X is the object of the my class. This is the condition here, that whenever you are defining a friend function, now how to access the private data member? You can only access the private data member with the help of the object of your class. So to create the object of the class, you need to specify a variable of the class type here. Then only it will give you the permission to get access its private data member. Otherwise, it will not give you the permission to access the private data member of that class, because the private data member can only be accessed within the class and you are accessing it outside of the class. Then how it can be aware that this function is belonging to this class? Now, whenever we are calling it with the x, it will see that x is an object or x is a variable which is of my class type. Now, my class is the name of that class. It means it is somehow it is related with the class. Then it will say it's a friend of that class. It will allow you to access that variable. In the main method, it is creating the object. Then it is calling the member function. It is passing the value and it is displaying it. You can see here the sum is not the member function of the class, but it is having still full access to the private data member. That is a beautification thing here, and we didn't call it with the help of the dot operator because it is not the member function. No need to call it here, right? Thank you very much. In the next, we will definitely proceed with the next topic.